Aleem, the real estate boy, and welcome to Philly Fridays, all real estate. So, here, what we do is we take Friday and we talk about different real estate matters. So, in this video, we're going to talk about is house hacking worth it? Okay. Now, I had a special guest on, but he's having some technical difficulties. So, when he actually comes on, then I'll bring him in. But let's talk about house hacking. Is house hacking worth it? So the first question is, what exactly is house hacking? Now, this is something that, man, I wish I knew about when I was young. All right. When I was young, coming up, graduated college, the only thing I kind of really knew was renting and buying. And buying just seemed like it was so far away from me. The only thing that I knew was renting. So I rented, I think I maybe rented for maybe 2 or 3 years after college. And then my friend that I went to college, I went and visited him in Baltimore because when I graduated college, I lived in Washington, D.C. So I lived in Washington, D.C., the metro area, Prince George's County, maybe for like 4 or 5 years. And then my buddy was from Baltimore. So I went to go visit him, and he actually owned a home. And it kind of blew me away because this was a guy that I went to school with. Like, this was my young boy, and he owned a home. And I was like, wow. And then he told me what he paid for it. And a lot of Baltimore homes at that time were super cheap. And I'm like, wow. So when I got back, I actually was living with a guy at that time, and he was house hacking because I was renting a room from him. So I was being house hacked on. I didn't know it. I just know, hey, I had a nice place to stay. I was with my buddy, so we could kick it there. And when I went to sleep, or if I had to go out or whatever, I rented that room. So I was probably paying his mortgage. All right. So, but that's what house hacking is. House hacking is when you buy a home and you're either going to rent the home out. No, sorry. You're going to buy a home and you're either going to rent a room out, or what you do is you get a multi-unit and you live in one unit and you rent the other units out. So as I was mentioning, what happened is that I was being house hacked on, and it never dawned on me that's what was happening. What I would just pay the rent, and my rent was probably covering that guy's mortgage. So I did that. I visited my friend in Baltimore, and he told me about his house. And he was like, he told me he paid maybe like 60,000 for it, 65,000 or something like that. So it just kind of weighed on me. It weighed on me. And I was like, wow. So I got back to my house and I pondered over it maybe for like a month or two. And then I'm like, I called him up. I'm like, hey, do y'all got, you think there's any more houses out there like that? And he was like, listen, you can buy my house. So he gave me a crazy, well, it was a cheap price at that time. I mean, it was a no-brainer. I could probably afford a lot more than what I purchased that house for. But because I didn't have any experience, I was scared. So I knew that I could handle that budget. So I bought that house. I bought the house. It was a three-bedroom house and a finished basement. Now, I definitely could have house hacked, meaning what? I could have lived in that house, and those other two rooms and that bottom room, I could have rented out to somebody else, but I didn't. I just stayed in I just stayed in that house, that real house in Baltimore, and I just lived like a king. Now, this was before a wife, this was before kids and all of that, but I just lived like a king in there. But what we want to talk about today is house hacking. And again, the premise is, and I really feel like everybody should be doing this. If you now, it's going to be tough if you don't have a family. I mean, if you have a family, all right, because you may have family, you may have a wife or a husband, and you may have kids. So trying to rent out another room in your home is probably next to impossible. Meaning that your wife or your husband probably wouldn't accept, and you don't want them strangers around your kids per se. Okay, so that's going to be super tough. So that's one way that you can house hack is you living, buying a home, a single family home, and you living in one room and somebody else living in the other rooms or the finished basement. Now, if you do that, if you're buying a single family home and you do want to do that, one good idea is maybe to have a walkout basement. And a walkout basement is when there's a basement that has a door to the outside. Now, it's perfect if you have a home that has the basement is finished and there's a bathroom, a full bathroom down there, and there's also a walkout basement. Now you may say, well, what about the kitchen? You could always get a electric stove. You get an electric stove and put down there. All right. But that's one way that you can house hack in a single family property. But when people talk about house hacking, most of the time what they're talking about is that they're buying a multi-family property. And a multi-family property is a building that has two or more units in it. So there's 2 units or 3 units or 4 units. I'm going to stop at 4 units because that's residential. Anything over 4 units becomes a commercial loan, which has higher interest rates. So I think my special guest, I'm trying to bring my special guest on, but it doesn't seem like his camera is working. So I'll keep him on ice until I see him, but it doesn't look like his camera's working. Okay. Give me 1 second. Let me just let him know that his camera's not on. All right. So when you're looking at a 2 unit, three unit, or 4 unit, you're gonna buy now. Okay, why not just buy the units and rent them out? Meaning, why not just buy the multifamily and just rent the sucker out? Okay. The reason why is that when you buy any home, whether it's a single family home or whether it's a duplex or a triplex or a quadplex, if you buy it as an investment property, what's going to happen is that it's going to be an investment loan. Hold on 1 second. It's going to be an investment loan. When it's an investment loan, what that means is that now you're going to pay 20 or 25% down. You're going to put 20 or 25% down. And a lot of times that completely destroys your numbers, completely destroys your numbers. Okay. All right. My special guest is on now, so I'm going to bring him on. Okay. Y'all, give me 1 second. All right. So, again, we're talking about house hacking. I'm going to bring on my special guest and we're going to keep this moving. All right. So, give me 1 second. All right. So, there we go. Can you hear me?
Can you actually hear me though?
Okay. Okay, so we were talking about multifamily and talking about house hacking. So my special guest is on right now, Shad Hammonds. Shad Hammonds is a well, you know what? Let me let Shad tell you about himself, if he can hear me. He can't hear me. Okay. He's having some issues with his mic or something, but we're going to keep it moving. Okay. So Um, talking about multifamily, when you go and you buy a multifamily, because when you go and purchase a home, you're either purchasing it as an owner occupied home or you're purchasing it as a investment home. If you're purchasing it as an owner occupied home, in general, your interest rate is going to be lower and your down payment, which is critical, is your down payment is going to be lower. So if you're purchasing it as an owner occupied and you do FHA, then your down payment can be as low as 3.5%. Now, if you're purchasing it as an investment property, your down payment, the lowest is probably going to be is 20 or 25%. All right. So when you do that, if I mean, it just makes sense. It just makes sense that you would want to do owner occupied. So when you're buying, let's just say a threeplex or a fourplex, a quadplex, or a triplex, if you buy that and you only put 3.5% down, your numbers are going to look a lot better than if you got to put 20 or 25% down. And let's be real, most people don't have it. Okay. Most people don't have it. I'm gonna try to bring Shad on again to see if he can hear me. Can you hear me now? Okay. I can't hear you. Um, nope. So so when we're yeah, I can't hear you. And this is one of the things about doing a live show is that when you have technical difficulties, everybody knows. Yeah, I can't hear you. Okay, so we're just going to X that and we're going to keep this moving. Okay, so when you're looking to buy a multi-family property, you're going to want to live in one of the units. So when you live in one of the units, you're going to rent the other units out. Now, when you rent the other units out, that's going to do a couple of things. That's going to give you a taste of being a landlord because some people don't like being a landlord. So if you buy the property and then you rent the other units out to other people, you could be the landlord. Or what you can do if you don't want to be the landlord is you can do one or two things. You could act like you're the manager. Okay. You can tell them like, hey, I'm the manager and not the owner. What does that do? That gives you a third person, so you're not the bad guy. So if you're raising rents, for example, let's just say that you're raising rents and you go to them and you're like, hey, I'm raising rents, and they know that you're the owner, then they may be able to pull purse strings and they may or heartstrings and be like, hey, why can't you do this and why can't you do that? And so on and so forth. But if you say that you're the manager, then you could blame somebody else. It's called hot potato. That's what it's called, hot potato. In the world of sales, it's called hot potato. You're taking that hot potato and you're passing it on to somebody else. Okay. Um, so you could do that, or what you could do is hire a property management company. And when you're running your numbers, you should always put in 10% for a property management company, even if you're going to manage the place yourself. Because at some point in time, what you may want to do is pass it on to somebody else. You may want to pass the responsibility on to somebody else. So you want to make sure that your numbers still work with the 10% for property management. So what we were looking at, is it worth it? All right. Is it worth it to house hack? Let me try to bring Shadow on one more time. All right. Can you hear me?
Anything? Anything?
I can't hear
Can
you
you hear
now.
me? You can't hear me?
I can. I can.
Phenomenal. Phenomenal. You look
All
good
right,
too.
great. Well, Shad, I was in here just talking about house hacking, going over if it's worth it. But again, Shad is an investor. He's also a loan officer. So I wanted to bring him on. Shad, why don't you tell us about your background? Tell us about your story before we get started back into house hacking.
Absolutely. So appreciate you for having me on. You have been laying down the law. Like I can hear you, and there's so many points that you raised in just 5 to 10 minutes that I want to jump in on. But I am Shad Hammond. I'm team leader here at Loan Depot. I am an originator. I am an agent, licensed agent. Been so for about 10 years. I am an investor, somebody who believes heavily on not only building my business, but helping and reaching back and helping others you know, build their businesses as well. Khalid and I have always aligned from the beginning because we both like to use social media as our main voice, our main platform to, again, help bring others up. so that way we all can kind of collectively build wealth, right? That's what a lot of this is about, because obviously we both believe, as many of you who are watching, I'm sure, believe in legacy, right? That's a powerful word. So a lot of times we know that we can uplift others and build that legacy through real estate. That's just one vehicle. There's many, but that's one vehicle, and that's one that we both specialize in on. So I've again been in the real estate business for about, or industry for about 12 years on some level, whether it be licensed agent, licensed lender, and an investor, someone that does own property. And then, like I said, it was several things I kind of wanted to interlude on. And Khalid opened it up and asked, is it worth it? Right? He asked, is it worth it? That's a big question. A lot of folks are too cautious or too hesitant, or I think are sometimes let's say misinformed, and don't realize the true value of being able to occupy a property and have others help pay for your mortgage and help build equity in your home, equity that you could possibly use for the next property. So take us somewhere, Khaled, and let's keep it how we keep it. What you thinking? Where you want to go?
Gotcha. Well, why don't you tell us about your personal experience with house hacking?
Yes, yes. So we'll talk about a couple things. So my first home that I owned, right? There was a time where I was at Hampton University, right? I was about to just jump all in Hampton University, first semester. My grandfather decides to move from Philly to his second home permanently in Galveston, Texas, right? Just outside of
Oh
Houston,
wow.
Beach Town, right?
Okay.
I buy my grandfather's house for $1. It's on
Okay.
52nd Street. The house could possibly be, the way it was carved up, a triplex, but a massive, um, maybe 1,800 square feet, maybe about 2,000 square feet, three
Okay.
floors, two bathrooms, five bedrooms, just a massive structure, right? Semi-finished basement. Here it is. I'm 18, 19 years old managing that. And so
Oh
little
wow.
do I know, that was my first opportunity to be a house hacker. Well, back before I even thought about what that term meant. But Temple University is where I transferred to, and I had several rooms be rooms where people would rent from me, whether they be students or fellas that I knew from the neighborhood. Right? I even had a music studio where members of the Roots would go up there and spar like a gym. Right? We'll just practice their craft up on the third floor. So
Now, was
house
that in this house? Are you saying that the house that your grandfather left you, or there was other units outside of that you had?
the house that the grandfather left me. The house that I
Okay.
first owned, my very first property, was at 18, 19 years old, West Philly,
Okay.
between Warrington and Springfield, right before Chester, a couple over from Apple Storage.
Now,
Those of
how
you
did you
who,
get acclimated to that? As far as, and I'm just picturing myself,
yeah,
18 or 19, somebody's not giving me a house, but for all intents and purposes,
yeah,
giving me a house.
yep,
And now I have these tenants who are already in there. And me being having my own properties and managing them, how did that work? Like, how did you jump into that?
yeah. Well, it was a shit show, Khalid. Excuse my French.
Okay.
Because again, I'm 18, 19 years old. I'm at school. I got like two or three jobs. I was forever chasing money. And
Okay.
there were some difficult conversations. And again, the tenants were colleagues, not all of them friends, but colleagues, right? And so I knew them. I would This
Oh
was my
wow.
first opportunity to vet them, right? To
Okay.
vet someone that would be living in your home, right? And
Mm.
so at 18, 19, I did learn on the fly. I made several mistakes, a lot of handshaking deals, a lot of
Oh
missed
wow.
rents, a lot of missed
Mm.
payments. And again, if
Mm.
mismanaged incorrectly, like it often was, you end
Mm.
up, by time when it was time to buy my first big boy house and graduate from that
Mm.
house, I did so with about a 495 credit score, right? I did so because a lot of the bills would be in my name, but when you're relying on rents from others, it's tough. It's tough. So at 18, 19 years old, for a series of up to about 10 years, that was my first experience as a landlord, and of which it wasn't my last, obviously, but it was my first experience as a landlord, a property manager, right? And again, somebody who has to vet, tenants. right? And again, when we talk about house hacking, we always talk about, hey, minimum down payment, get in, have somebody, but there
Right.
there is some cons to it, right? We do know there could possibly be some pain points. And again, Khalid
Mm,
asks, is it worth it? And when we ask that, we have to have that full discussion, right? And so now, as again, a big boy and adult that owns properties, I'm actually going through my first eviction right now, right? Where
mm.
fast forward 20 years later, I'm experiencing, what it's like to have that uncomfortable conversation or have that uncomfortable experience of owning property and allowing others to rent property from you. It's a difficult um transition when you're learning. But it could again be obviously fruitful.
Gotcha. So what was the progression as far as that house? We're taking that house. Was
Yep.
that house eventually sold or
Oof, don't bring that up. Don't bring it up. That house was actually sold for a third of probably what it's worth. And
wow.
oddly enough, the house was wholesaled most likely last week. I'm still trying to find out, but it popped up on the MLS for like 48 hours and I lost it. I was like, oh my God, I can buy my house back. And it was selling for dirt cheap, not as cheap as I sold it, but this is what happens when you don't see the big picture or you don't
Right.
have education. Why this man, Khalid is heavy on educating those that he serves. It's not just another transaction to him, but it's important for folks like us to build that knowledge. I sold that house because I found out there was some back taxes, and
Mhm.
I was beefing with Pico, and the house started to have some wear and tear, of which again, as a young man, I couldn't really afford to, maintain in many ways. And again, when you got these tenants in and out, it can be difficult. So again, overall, I learned a lot. I made good money for a kid, right? I lived my entire 20s traveling all around the world, hanging out with, like I said, the Roots and seeing them in London and all of that. Those were glamorous times, but the pain points were I had a tough time maintaining a property of that size and not having the any type of mentor, any type of experience in real estate until it was after I had already sold that house, thinking, oh man, this house is a pain in the ass. Let me just sell it.
Mhm.
And little did I know that house is like 400 grand ARV. And
Wow.
I didn't sell it for that.
Gotcha. Now, when you sold that house, okay, you
Yep.
sold it and you're out of that house and you're done with the headache. Um, did you ever go back to house hacking? Did you ever get back into house hacking?
Yeah. So I want to then kind of shift gears. So the properties that I own right now are single family properties.
Okay.
So I haven't per se been the guy that I'm kind of pitching people to be on my day job, which is lending, right? So
Right.
kind of shifting gears, me personally, I don't own any multis currently. Um, Mostly again, single family, slow roll, however, the day job, I'm constantly working with not only first time buyers, but I think right now education because of platforms like this one have now informed everybody of the importance or the possibilities, the potential of house hacking. Now folks are like, whoa, I want my first property to be a triplex. I want my first property to be a duplex. Even though certain markets is not very practical, but at least the mindset is there. So now my day job is, even though again, personally, I don't own any multis now, I'm constantly preaching the benefit of being able to have, Miss Patricia living above you with her three cats, paying the bills for the both of you, right? If it's a
Right.
duplex, and using programs like the FHA with the 3.5% down payment. However, before we do go, quick nugget, there is an opportunity for home possible conventional 5% down. We can talk a little bit more about that, but everybody always assumes the FHA with the minimum down payment of 3.5%
Right.
is the only vehicle. Conventional does have a competitive program as well. So you could essentially, and Khalid knows well about using kind of that FHA card, you can kind of put that in your back pocket and then use
Mm.
it on the second property. right? Using the conventional for the first. A lot of us will use FHA on the first, know that at some point we got to refinance out of it, and then try to use it again. What if you didn't use it on the first and use the conventional loan on the first for 5% down, right? So we could talk a little bit more about that, man. But single family home right now for me, sir, wholesaling for me right now. I've wholesaled a couple of duplexes, one in Logan recently, but I
Okay.
haven't really purchased any duplex recently or tries or multifamilies recently.
Okay. And before you jumped on, I was giving my own story about how I graduated from Shippensburg many moons ago,
Mhm.
moved down to Washington, D.C., and I was being house hacked on. So I was renting a room from my buddy. And to me, it was a great situation. It was a great situation because I'm living with my buddy. So we hanging out, we going out, and we coming back. And it's just like, oh, this is love. But little did I know, I was probably paying his mortgage.
Oof,
So
yeah.
he had a nice home, and I'm just not even thinking about it. But I think his dad probably put him on to, okay, buy this house, rent out a room to one of the guys. And that's exactly what I was doing. And I had also let them know shortly after that, I bought a house in Baltimore, but no one ever told me about house hacking. If somebody would have told me about this, then I would have definitely did it from square one because you don't need a lot of money. And here's the thing is that if you're young and you're single, you can kind of put yourself in different positions that you won't be able to do once you get married and have kids. There are different risks that you can take, whether you're buying because you can house hack whether you have a single family home or you have a multi-unit. The guy Doug Depp,
Yeah, I got it.
who's a big real estate investor in Philadelphia, he always tells his story about when he lived in Delaware. He I think he had like a three-bedroom. He got like three people in there and lived in a garage.
We lived in a garage.
Okay.
I was just going to mention that too. Another story of mine, Khalid, and I hate to jump in, but this one is fresh on my
Of
mind, and I
course.
will lose my thoughts. I'm a senior, right? But the other one is similar to Doug's story. Is there are people once they have land, and again, might not be our market in particular, but when I brought up this, that we were doing this latest installment on house
Mhm.
hacking, young man mentioned that he had a dilapidated garage out back. It wasn't beat up, but it was livable. Very similar to Doug's story, where some people are capable of building an extra unit. That's house hacking, right? Building an extra
Right.
unit where somebody can live in, renting rooms versus units. Again, like Khalid said, if you have a single family home, you still can do fairly well. $500 a room is what this young lady that one of my latest transactions, she bought a house, massive house, about 1,800 square feet in North Philadelphia. Bought it from some colleagues that we both know. It's near Temple's campus. It's on 15th Street, closer to Susquehanna, I think past Susquehanna Dolphin. It's not carved up as a duplex or try yet. Obviously, somebody like Dan, the real estate man, to have a field day in that place. However, it's a vacant lot next to it, right? So it's four very big bedrooms, three floors, and with that vacant lot next to it, could allow for maybe a back door entrance. So again, it doesn't have to be duplex, triplex, or quad. It could be Airbnb, Verbo, you adding on a different unit, you renting out rooms. But there's a lot of potential in it, and you just have to change that mindset, of
Right.
okay, cool. Do I want another reliable source of income? Can I manage property? Can I manage people? Right? And if so, it's just another lane for you to build wealth.
Gotcha. All right. So let's break down the levels of this, okay?
Yeah,
Because somebody doesn't know what house hacking is. They're looking at this. Let's go through the life of a house hack. Okay. So the first thing is, of course, getting the money for it. So you either got cash or you need to get a loan. So why don't you talk to the loan part of this, because that is your
Ah,
guidance.
yeah. So we know as when we talked about making sure that we kind of do a deep dive on the show, I said, well, you know, and you probably did this within the first couple minutes. I was on for a good portion, but when I thought about it last night, if I had to define it for somebody, I always want to start off, well, what is it? House hacking refers to finding ways to generate income from your home, period, right? Most of the time, we talk about purchasing a multifamily property, living in one unit, renting it out to others, so that way those tenants can help pay the owner's mortgage. The owner builds equity over time and then could possibly use that equity maybe for the next investment if you're really thinking like a true investor or not, right? And so when we talk about the financing aspect, we know there's several vehicles that you can use. Many of the loans, whether it be anywhere from a VA loan or an FHA loan or a conventional loan, will allow for purchase of multiple units of a property. So again, you could do single family home, but most of those loan products, those vehicles do allow for you to buy more than one unit at a time in one home, in one dwelling. There are even grants that will allow you
Mhm.
to buy as a first time home buyer up to 2 units. So theoretically, you can have the minimum down payment, which could be anywhere from 3.5% to 5%, and also acquire government money to help you pay for your down payment and closing costs. Now, when we talk about any transaction, we know that there's a minimum down payment involved. However, that is not the only payment involved, right? We know the third party fees and costs and so forth, title fees, recording fees, transfer taxes, and so forth. So when we talk about the minimum down payment, we do also need to include the closing costs. But we do know for minimum down payment, if we go FHA, the VA, no down payment and only those third party costs, and you could essentially buy a duplex. And then obviously conventional loan, where seldomly used, no one talks about it, rarely executed. It does have a couple of different layers, but I did mention a home possible loan, which would allow you 5% of a down payment and then those closing costs. I believe nationwide, I believe it's 80% AMI or average median income, which means 80% of what the average median income is for that particular area. So it can kind of get a little funky, but it
Right.
still allows you to keep that FHA in your back pocket. But for these minimum down payments, if you pull out a calculator, right, and you say you found a beautiful $250,000 multi-unit on Parkside Avenue, right? And somebody
Mhm.
said minimum down payment, and we know those homes, the homes I'm referring to that face the park, are massive homes, 3,000 square feet, some
Right.
of them.
Right.
We know that minimum down payment on something like that, 250, would be 8750. Now just think about that. $8,750. Right? A transaction at $250 could possibly cost you anywhere between 20 to 25 grand. For that particular purchase versus $250,000, Khalid, and you paying 20% down, which would be $50,000, and that's just the minimum down payment,
Right.
not the closing costs
Not including closing
involved,
costs. Right.
right? Now we're starting to talk about leveling up. And then if I told you
Right.
that for that $250,000 and the transaction could cost anywhere between 20 to 25 grand all in versus maybe 50 to 75 grand if we did it as an investor, that we also, Khalid and myself, kind of patting ourselves on the back, because we've done this several times, is now acquiring government money. Because again, a lot of grants and programs will allow you to buy up to 2 units, still using Uncle Sam's money or still using a local agency's money, 10 grand or 15 grand that we might be able to get from somewhere else. That's a game changer. Now we're
Right.
talking about less than 10 grand. You can buy yourself a house and have, someone else potentially funding your mortgage payment, right? And allowing either covering it 100% or at least covering a lot of deals that I try to coach folks up, at least have it pay 75%. That's what a good deal would be, right? 75% of your home's bills, mortgage and maybe light bill, water bill, but that's kind of how we start to think and really process this stuff out with real numbers, right? And so,
Right.
FHA, VA, conventional, they all allow you to use, programs where you can purchase multiple units with one loan in one transaction. FHA up to 4 units, same down payment.
Right. Right. Gotcha. Now, so because I want to make this super, super simple for people.
Yeah.
Okay. So I'm going to get a FHA loan. A FHA loan, correct me if I'm wrong, but the minimum that I need is a 620. Now, I know there was some rule change where it went down to a 580, but
Hmm.
um if you have a 620 or better, and I mean, not to get too much in credit because we're not talking about this right now, but
Yep.
you really should have a 620. Okay. And if you don't, you want to get with a credit specialist to get it up to a 620. So we get a 620, and now if everything else qualifies, we can purchase a home. So let's just say that we were approved for $200,000. Okay. So we're approved for $200,000. And if we take the down payment, which is 3.5, and we also take the other closing costs, our closing costs are going to probably be around like 16,000, you think, for a $200,000 home?
$200,000 home. Yeah, maybe a little less, but yeah, for a $200,000 home, you're probably looking at about like 18 grand all in.
18 grand. Okay, so we're at
Down
18
payment
grand.
included
Now,
with the down payment included with the closing cost.
correct. Down payment and closing. So we're
Hmm.
a $200,000 pre-approval.
Hmm.
And then now we're closing costs are around, let's say, $18,000.
Yep.
So you were saying that we may be able to get some government assistance. So why don't you call them out by name as far as what grants would be out there? Just name one grant that we could get for a 2 unit.
So for those watching, let's try to keep it, regional. So Pennsylvania Finance and Housing Agency, PHFA, for the state of Pennsylvania, anybody in the state of Pennsylvania, you could potentially use the Pennsylvania KFIT for Keystone Forgivable in 10 years, right? So,
Refit. Okay.
yep, that program would give you up to 5% of the purchase price with no cap, right? So no matter what the price of the house was, they'd give you 5% of that purchase price towards your transaction for you to put towards your down payment and closing costs.
Okay. So in this example of $200,000, they would give us $10,000. So
Yes.
in essence, our down payment would be $8,000, correct?
Yeah,
Or
that
our
that that
closing
will be.
costs.
Yep. Yep, that would be
So
it.
so so we're getting a $200,000 home for with only $8,000 down. Now
Mhm.
I'm going to go now right now to Zillow, and I'm just going to pull up a $200,000 home in Philadelphia, and we're going to see in real time as
Yeah.
far as what type of monies we're going to be making. And you can not you, but people can go through this with me. I see that there's one. It's on 5329 Angora Terrace. So this home is
Angora.
$200,000. And go there we go, Angora. So it probably needs a little bit of work, but it's a duplex. So now I'm just
Those
going
are
to go
big.
by the estimate. I'm not going to go by that. Then what you will want to do is if you go to Rent-O-Meter, okay? If you
Mhm.
go to Rent-O-Meter and you go in and you put in the S Rent-O-Meter, and you can put it in exactly how it's spelled. Um, Rent-O-Meter is going to, let's see what they have here. All right, so this is a probably a 3 bedroom and a 2 bedroom. This is in Cops Creek. Um,
Yep. Oh
this
well.
is, let's just say, a 2 bedroom because it's 5 bedrooms. So if we just let me just take a 2 bedroom.
Yeah,
A
without
two
even looking at
bedroom,
that one, I know exactly what block that is.
according to, so that's $1,300. Okay. Your estimated payment for a $200,000 loan. Now, again, there's probably some things that need to be changed here because it's always super low when you're at these payment estimates. Let me see if I can
Yeah, a
come
lot of
down
them are
here
using
and these payment
20% down. So
monthly
be
down
careful. They give
payment.
you these super low payments.
Right. They don't have any mortgage insurance on here. So
Yeah,
two hundred
because
thousand
it's probably
dollars.
using
How much you
20%.
think the mortgage insurance is?
FHA probably like $175.
170. Yeah, they're
Yep.
not even going to let me put it in here.
Yeah, they like to
Uh
keep those payments low, man, so that way they entice the buyer to click that button.
so yeah, exactly. So I guess $200,000 home. The
Yep.
taxes are probably like around 1,500
I was gonna
since
say
the
about 15, sixteen
spike.
hundred.
What do you think the
What's the
down
address,
payment? I
Khalid?
mean, what do you think the monthly payment's going to be?
I say probably just under 2 grand, about 1,800.
Okay. So 1,900.
Yep.
So, and I hope everybody's staying with us. So we got a $200,000 home that we only
Mm-hmm.
have a 620 credit score,
Mm-hmm.
and our down payment is only $8,000. So our down payment is $8,000. Um, our monthly payment is going to be around $1,900. So if our down payment is around $1,900, a two-bedroom, according to rental meter in that area, is going for the average is $1,300. Okay, so it's a $1,300. That's for the two-bedroom. If you rent it out the three-bedroom, let's see what that is. Uh, see if it gives it to us. It's a little bit more. Um, but let's say the two bedroom. The two bedroom is 13. So if you stay with that 13 and you're at 19, now for a three bedroom, you're paying like $600. You're paying for
Yep.
six, and that's for 1 year. Because here's the kicker: you live in it for 1 year, and then you move out, and now you got two doors. Now
Two
you
doors.
got two doors, and now your income, let's just say, is 2,600. Okay, if it's 2,600 and you're paying 1,900 a month, that's $700 in cash flow a month. And how much did you put down? You put down $800. You put down $800. I mean, people. If I was, and before you got on here, I said, man, if I was young, I'd be doing this all day.
All day long. All day
I'll be
long.
doing this.
All day
I'll be
long.
doing this all day long. So,
So
all
I
right.
ran
So
real numbers
we
real quick. Real quick. I had to,
okay.
right?
Okay.
On that property. I had to. I think you guys will like these numbers. So real quick. $1,600, Khalid, if they were doing
Mm,
$200,000 minimum down payment for FHA, three and a
mm,
half.
uh-huh.
Use the competitive interest rate, um, but hovering around $1,600. Cash to close would be about $19,000 all in. And again, that can be conjecture. That could be plus or minus a grand or two in either direction, but no more than 20K to buy all in, and the monthly payment, including the mortgage insurance, again, FHA, hovering around $1,600, the low 16s.
Wow.
It's really, really not bad. And in particular, that block where those homes are right on the edge of Cobb's Creek, but then you'll still kind of see how University City is expanding its range.
Right.
It could kind of be a little bit of both almost, and you are starting to see that area gentrify, as well as those are really big rooms in both of those properties. So the three is usually upstairs, and the two floor is on the downstairs level. But all the rooms are big. It's really sizey, real deep property. Just to speak in specifics about that particular property, but just look at those numbers. $1,600. He just told you one unit alone could rent for $1,300. That's what I mean. At least having, one tenant be able to cover at the very least 75% of your bills, if not 100%, if not even more. So that's what we talk about, allowing you the financial flexibility to focus on other things, other investments, other streams of income.
Right.
Or if you again want to pursue real estate and make it more of a focus for yourself, these are the kind of vehicles that get you there.
Right. And to continue with this person's journey through house hacking, okay? They put this money down. Okay, now they're in the property. So they're in the property and now they get a tenant. And as you said, the tenant is covering 75% of their mortgage. So now they're living
Very much.
super cheap. And okay, now what are that's the good things. All right. Now let's flip it. Now what are the bad things? What are some of the pitfalls of this person now that they own a duplex and now they're a landlord for all intents and purposes? What are some of the downfalls now?
Hey, well, again, if you have no experience, or let's say you don't have the time, let's say you constantly work, let's say your job is a
Mm,
job where you travel, right? And so you're not home
mm,
all the time. So again, it's the lack of experience. It's just one of many things. The lack of experience, you being able to vet new tenants, right? You being able to monitor the property, because essentially not only do you live there, but you are in charge of maintaining the property. So a lot of times we learn on the fly. We would love to have a sweet old lady or sweet older fella that lives upstairs, that lives lightly, right? Doesn't beat up stuff and turn the lights. Every time he turns the light switch on, it's like he's slam dunking it, right? And he's
mm,
flushing your toilet extra hard, and he breaks the arm. Again, I've had it. I have many attendants, and breaks the arm in the that pulls up the stopper in the toilet,
okay.
and just the silly stuff leaves the water running. It can be a lot, and
Hmm.
those of us who again are learning on the fly, who are just ordinary everyday people, but oh, by the way, they're also property managers. That could be a lot to take on. So that would be one kind. It's just how to maintain, again, people, right? Because you are a people manager as well as a property manager. You're vetting a good tenant, and then you're also managing the property that's different because you live in it too. It's not one that you live in the next town over and you come back every now and then. But if they're messing with the plumbing, that affects you as well. So those would definitely
Right.
be some things to think about. What else you got? What else are you thinking? Because I could go
I
on.
mean, those things that you mentioned, they can hire a property manager. You hire a
Hmm.
property manager, then you kind of take it out of your hands and put it on them.
Yeah,
So when
yeah.
you do that, it does cost you a little bit, but it takes the headache and it allows you to do what you do. Okay, because if now you're a landlord, it is another job. But I do recommend that all new investors be property managers to start out, so you know what it is, so you know what it's hitting for, so that when you deal with property managers, you kind of already know what they should be doing and what they shouldn't be doing. And of course, how to find a good property manager is you can ask people who already have property managers. So that person is just say the person is property managing, but again, with an FHA loan, you have to stay in the property for a year. Okay. So you stay in the property for a year, and then after that, you can bounce out and rinse and repeat. That's the thing. Now, not with an FHA, because you can only have one FHA. Is that correct?
Only can have typically one FHA unless there was some type of. There's a couple of very fine
Right.
print exceptions to the rule in terms of locality and second homes, and yeah, there's a lot of different little loopholes. For the most part, one per family, right? One FHA loan per family. Hence the living it a year refi. Now you got a new FHA. Now you can make another home your primary home. Wink, wink.
Here's a
Um,
question. I'm glad I got you here.
yeah.
So if and I spoke with a guy earlier today or yesterday, and the question came up: if I'm married and me and my wife we're going to buy a home, I buy it by myself and use my FHA. When we move in there, can she get an FHA by herself? Or does it matter we're in the same household, like one FHA per person or one FHA per household?
So look, you bring up a very, very, very good point. So usually one per person, usually one per family if they're married. And again, a lot of different exceptions. Having
Right.
closed over 1,100 loans in 39 states, I've seen a lot of different things, right? There are a number of investors that we either follow or are colleagues of ours who, when they're dating their fiance, they go out and they buy their properties individually first before they're married. So
Okay.
again, like you said, if we could rewind and hit a rewind button, we would do it differently, right? We would do it before we get married, buy your property, your potential wife buy her property, both using FHA loans. And again, there's people that have done this. So this isn't just me making it up. And there are so-called gurus who have done this and said, hey, look, this is how we did it. In fact, different house hack other than the FHA, young man that I follow, you may follow him as well. He uses the NACA program. He used the NACA to buy a 4 unit. It
Mhm.
took forever because that's what NACA does. It takes forever, right? It is, I mean, and it's amazing how he pulls these off and coaches people to do it. Because as great of a program it is on paper, the probability of you seeing it start to finish is minimal. Let's just keep it as being, right? So,
Right.
but his girlfriend, he said, hey, babe, the house that we're living in, I bought it with this beautiful program, this NACA program. And before
Mhm.
he tied the knot, had her do the same thing and coach her through the program. So
Okay.
typically it's one per family, especially if you coming in as already bonded. You really have to kind of sell it to an underwriter that, hey, there's a possibility where we ain't all good and I'm splitting, I'm taking off, or, we need two different homes, right? It's
Okay.
typically one per family, especially once you guys are package deal, your unit, your stuff is showing up
Right.
on the same taxes and bills and bank accounts. Tough sell,
Okay. Okay.
but
Okay.
hey,
All right.
if she's just your boo and not legally binded with a ring on her finger, house
Okay.
hack right there. Both buy multi units using an FHA
Right.
or a conventional home possible loan. Get those multi units, then tie the knot. Make sense?
Gotcha. Definitely makes sense, man. So we're gonna wrap this up, man. I think we gave everybody a lot of game. If you're single, if you're single and you're young, this is definitely a no-brainer. I'm always tell people if you have time on your side because you're young, it just baffles me why you're not putting yourself in a position to buy a home. Because yeah, will the price go up or down 1 or 2 years? Speculation. For a year, speculation. But if you look at any graph of home prices going out 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 years, it's always going up. It's always going up. Will it happen in the future? God knows best. Okay. But if we're looking at the past to move in the future, it's always going up, man. So if you have time on your side, as they say, if you're young, you should definitely be buying. If you're young and single, you should definitely be getting into house hacking. Um, you do need to get pre-approved first. So, Shad, why don't you let them know where they can find you at?
All right, so I'm Shad Hammond, team leader again, Loan Depot, www.loandepot slash or dash Shad Hammond. That's SHADHAMMOND. Shad Knows Loans is my Instagram handle, Shad Hammond on Facebook, shadhammond.com. You can visit all of those. You pull up my 7 or 8 minute application, and within 12 to 24 hours, we are on the phone strategizing your next home ownership transaction.
Gotcha. And this is Khalid Nathan Aleem, the real estate boy. If you're looking to buy a home, sell a home, or invest in